Riders of Oya came about from the death of my brother. So my brother was murdered, and I struggled. I've always been kind of an advocate and proponent for mental illness, mental health, seeking treatment. And so I knew I had to get myself together. And then I looked at my oldest daughter, Camille, and I'm like, what's wrong with her? Why is she struggling? And then I had to realize she's also struggling from the death of her uncle, but she's also struggling by seeing her mother struggle mentally. And I've been a writer since I was a small child. 3rd grade is the earliest I can remember when I actually had my first competition and I competed. And so I said, okay, I have always written poetry, I've always journaled, competed in college, and I said, I need to give my child something to stabilize her right now, and something that I can give easily and freely is writing. And then I thought, I can give that to other children too. So when I had learned that the Urbana Arts and Culture Commission gave grants to fund projects, I said, okay, why not? I'm just going to go for it. So I was really happy to receive the grant. And then it was like, from there, I was like, okay, so now what do? I had to establish a connection within the school, and then I had to actually go out and market. I had to come up with the curriculum, and then I had to go promote this to these little people who are like so frightening. And it just kind of worked out. It's been a blessing. The reason that I chose middle school girls, particularly girls of color, is because I noticed as a woman of color, there's kind of shaming to seeking help when it comes to mental health awareness. We kind of just talk to each other. We talk to our sisters, our aunts, our mothers, our grandmothers. We talk to our friends. And I wanted to create a space and to create a culture where it's okay to talk to someone you don't know about something that's bothering you, because that's never been okay for me. It's always just been keep it in the family. And so to go out and seek mental health services, you have to be able to first recognize what you're feeling, then to be able to articulate what you're feeling, and then to process what you're feeling. And even as adults, we struggle with this. So to see my child struggle with it, I said, she's not the only one. There's other girls her age who are struggling with this. And although I'm no expert, I know how to talk to a girl. I have 3 daughters. I have 6 sisters. I'm a woman. I know how to talk to a young woman. So that's kind of how I got started with the project. And it's just become this phenomenal thing. Originally, I had 11 girls sign up, but only 4 of them stayed throughout the program. And then it dropped to 3. I was so discouraged, and I'm like, I thought I had this great idea. I thought I was doing a good job. And then my mom said, stick with it, stick with those 3. And then I saw those 3 continue to speak, continue to grow, continue to say, hey, there's this workshop you can come to. And so with our 2nd session, we had 13 girls. And I'm like, yay, we've doubled, but now I have to deal with all these personalities and things. And so we just all connect on our womanhood, and we all connect on just wanting a safe place to talk to. Camille, Denilah, and Ashley. And Ashley couldn't be here today because she's in Puerto Rico. And I said, it's just 3 and one of them's my kid. Like, this must not be a good program. And my mom said, no, keep going. And is Denilah here? Good, because I want her to hear this. Denilah is kind of my daughter. We already have a relationship, right? Not perfect, but we have a relationship. But when there was another girl who can come into the workshop and I can see she had a bad day, and she's willing to say, I did have a bad day. I trust you enough to open up to you. I trust you enough to ask your advice. I trust you enough to implement your advice. It's profound for me. I'm a registered nurse, that's my profession. And some people aspire to change the world, doing large-scale things. In my professional nursing practice, I believe in changing the world one person at a time. And so when Denilah and I began to develop that relationship, I said, I'm changing the world with this one girl. She doesn't see how phenomenal she is, but I can help her to start opening her eyes. So I'm glad I stuck with it. I'm really glad I stuck with it. And then with Ashley, English is her second language, and she originally joined to become more proficient in English. And I was encouraging her to write her poetry in Spanish. And she's like, no, I need to learn my English. I'm like, okay. And then with Ashley, I learned that, you know, I have this black girl experience. Denilah has this black girl experience. Camille has this black girl experience. Ashley has this Afro-Latina experience. So it was eye-opening for me to see that she goes through similar struggles as black girls, but they're compounded by her Latina status, by her immigrant status, by her language barriers. And so I had to learn and challenge myself. How can I support her better? How can I open my eyes to see her unique conflicts? Because some of the problems that I see personally is with mental health, with nursing, with health, with anything, you have this objective, this is how you do it. It totally ignores the individual. So I tailored an individual experience for girls of color. And I had made the same problems others make when addressing women of color, right? We're all girls of color. We're all going to have these shared experiences. And Ashley taught me, no, there's this whole other world to being a woman of color, depending on where you're from, depending on your original language, depending on your dialect. And so she challenged me, you know, just to question my biases, to also recognize that just because we are a group of women of color, we are not homogenous. So just as though I hope I'm teaching them, they're teaching me too. I came to a point where I realized I had nothing to lose. I'm the oldest of 8. My mother has 7 daughters and she had 1 son. And her 1 son was murdered the week before his birthday. He never got to meet his daughter. He was going to go to the army. Like within a week, his life was going to change and he was killed. And so that year after he died, I traveled a lot and I had to evaluate myself, and I said, this life can be taken from me at any moment. What do you want to do, Ashanti? What do you want to do? I said, I want to write, but I've always written. So I said, I'm going to publish. So I published my first book of poetry titled Woven, Perspectives of a Black Woman. And I said, that's great. You feel great. Pat yourself on the back. Now what are you going to do? And then I saw my daughter. And I said, I'm going to teach her to write because our voices need to be heard. So often we know the greats. We know Zora Neale Hurston. We know Maya Angelou. That was the 1900s. We're in the year 2000. It's a new millennium. It's the 21st century. So from that moment of crisis, I realized I had nothing to lose. Some people could have said, oh, you could have lost your life, you could have lost your husband, you could have lost your children, you could have lost your job, you could have lost your home. I was at such a low point. I thought I have nothing to lose, so I might as well risk everything. Wow, I've never articulated that before. It's kind of cool. Yeah, that's what did it. That's what did it. And so after the 3 girls, I was like, I'm gonna keep doing this. I have to keep writing, even if it's just with these 3 girls. If I just follow these 3 girls, if I just mentor them. I think my perspective kind of shifted from me to others. It shifted from, as a nurse, you know you're changing the world, you're making a difference, we're all heroes, hooray. I wanted to be able to look in the mirror and say, you changed that girl's life today, even if it was just a positive word, even if it was by listening and saying, I don't have the answer to that, but maybe we can figure it out together. You know, it's deeply personal to me because I've risked so much. I don't know. I can't lose. I can't lose. I have to give this generation of young ladies all that's within me, because my mother, my grandmother, my sisters, my aunts, they poured into me. I want to pour into them. And when Camille was struggling, we looked at mental health counselors. She and I tried to talk. And I'm like, there's no bridging this gap. What can we do that can bridge this gap? And it was writing. I tell the girls, always write in pen, because in that moment, your thoughts are valid. Never write in pencil. If they want to see me angry, like really angry, they'll pick up a pencil and, Miss Ashanti, I'm writing in pencil. Because I tell them, even if you spelled it wrong, even if you didn't write it straight, even if you want to erase it later, never do, because your thoughts and your feelings in that moment are valid. Don't ever let anyone say it's not valid. You can change your mind 30 seconds later, but that 30 seconds prior, you felt that way, and that's important. So I figure by teaching them not just to write, but then to have the courage to speak their minds and their hearts. They're a bad bunch of girls. These girls are going to change the world, I know it. This generation is going to change the world. Look at what they see. You heard their interviews, like it's heart-wrenching for me to hear them say, no one is listening. But you're listening, Keith. You invited them here. You gave them this opportunity. So I feel like sometimes they're saying as a child, no one is listening. But then that adult is saying, I heard you, come back. I heard you, tell me more. And if you keep telling, they're 10, they're 12, they're 11 years old, and you're teaching them so young that they're being heard, how old were you when you felt heard? I'm 34 years old, and I finally feel heard. It took the death of a sibling for me to say, you will hear me. Hopefully they won't have those crises. They won't have that crisis moment that forces them to speak up, that forces them to move. I am teaching them, I'm ingraining in them now. You can do it right now. What you feel is important right now. You hear these girls talking about George Floyd, Black Matters, coronavirus, self-esteem, self-respect, being positive, thinking and feeling their energy, impacting the energy of their community and those around them. Were you doing that at 11 years old? No way. But the children of this generation are exposed to so much. It's up to us as adults to take that exposure, put it through a lens, and get them to show us what they see, to tell us how they feel. Because like they said, they're the ones who are going to change it all. The process for the writers of Oya follows no tradition. I did some research on working with teens, working with girls of color, working in the schools. None of it made sense to me. So in our workshops, we actually spend very little time writing. You heard them say they want to be heard. We spend a good part of our workshops talking and listening to one another. I have a formula that I use where I want them to be able to recognize what they're feeling. I want them to have the recognition and be able to recite what they're feeling. And then there's this kind of reward system set up within themselves. So, like I said, we spend more time talking than writing. They need to feel heard. Sometimes you can have a feeling and not know what it is. And because I've been to therapy, I've been trained to recognize that feeling. If you do mindfulness or meditation, a lot of it focuses on, okay, let's take a step back, go backwards. What started this? Identify, identify, identify. I implement that into my teaching. Tell me about your day. Tell me about your family. What's going on? And so they chitter chat, you know, we are ladies, we'll chitter chat. And then I'll say, here's a piece of poetry. And I ask the girls, close your eyes and listen. Don't look at me. Close your eyes and listen. So it forces them, you know, 80% of what your brain processes comes from your eyes. It forces them to literally stop what they're used to doing and trying something new, to focus with your ears. Listen. So after I recite, I say, what did you hear? And it's very unstructured. They shot at me. I heard this word, I heard that word, I heard this, I heard that. Okay, I write it on the board. What did you feel? Close your eyes, listen. I reread the poem. What did you feel? Tell me. They shot it out. I write it on the board, and then we look and see what we have on the board. Okay, so you heard this, you felt this. What made you feel this way? What made that word stand out to you? Have you ever felt that way before? Has anyone ever treated you that way before? Now let's write about it. 30 seconds, give me 5 words. We don't spend time talking about haikus or rhyming or even composition. Ideally, as the program grows, I'd like to take it to a high school level where we can focus on those things. I'm not a trained writer. I'm not a PhD in literature. I just do what my heart and soul tells me. So I might not be the best to give critique on composition, but I can tell you that word stuck with you. Why? Why? Why did you feel that way? Give me a color. Tell me the color you hear. And they'll say, what, Miss Ashanti, the color? What's the color? What do you see? Because your eyes are closed, right? What's the color you're seeing behind your clothes? It's black, it's blue, that's sadness, that's anger. Why? Why did that word bring that out? And then they go into, well, you know, last year, or oh, one time this happened. The recite. It's getting them to name the feeling. It's getting to reflect on the feeling. Once they can name it, they can voice it, they're not afraid of it anymore. The writing comes easily. So that's my approach. Just kind of flew by the seat of my pants. Yeah. And it works.
It does work.
Yeah, and then we do public speaking as well. So thankfully the community's been very receptive. They've invited us to things like this, the 40/40 opening. I have a poetry slam, but with the pandemic we couldn't do that. The Sounds Like community. And they get pretty nervous, but I tell them, you've already done the hard part. You actually had to go within yourself, within your heart and your mind, identify what you were feeling. Then you had to pull it out. You could have just talked about it, but you did. You actually had to write the words onto paper that someone can find. I said, actually saying it, that's the easy part. You've already done the work. And they get that. The ones that stick with me get it. The ones that stick with me get it. I think my biggest challenge in the program right now is just reaching more girls, training other people to do this program. Because like I said, my philosophy is changing the world one person at a time. And one of my fears is that as the group gets bigger, I won't be able to give them that individualized attention that this program was created on. You know, like I can tell when Delilah's having a bad day. I can tell when she's going through something, despite her best efforts to hide it from me. That's my girl, I know. She just has to look at me. Okay, it's time to go. We need to go talk. And one of my fears, I won't even say one of the challenges, because I will overcome it, is that as the program grows, still maintaining that individualized relationship with each girl, still feeling as though I've made an imprint on their lives, because they certainly have imprinted mine. But my mother is a very direct woman. She doesn't have time to mince words. And so I originally had planned the Writers of Oya to be a 4-week workshop, and then the girl said, I really want to come back next week. Okay, it'll be 6 weeks. I really want to come back next week. Okay, it'll be 8 weeks. And it was only an hour and a half. So we're all talking, right? Because this is supposed to be a safe space. This is a therapy space. But I have to give you something. I have to push you to write. It comes from my mother. My mother didn't have time to hear your 15-minute sob story. She had 8 children. What's the problem? Identify it, name it. What's the solution? So it innately kind of came out. God. I don't know. No one taught me to do it this way. But if I had to attribute it to someone, it'd be my mother. It'd be my mother. But I've tailored it to be compassionate, to be caring. Yes, I'm challenging them, but I hope they never feel threatened. It's one thing to challenge, it's another thing to threaten. because we deal with mental health, suicide, depression, bullying, there is a point where you can push them too far, where they can spiral downward. So at the end of my workshops, we try to do something hands-on. So once we did like these stress balls, and I filled them with dry lavender, because that was a hard session that day. Like some of these sessions, we get really deep, we get into it. So I give them a coping mechanism. I tell them to color, I tell them to write, I tell them to draw, something to physically release that stress. Because I tell them, if you pin it all up in your mind and in your heart, it's gonna stay there until you explode. Putting it on paper, it's coming out. And I said, you may not always feel better right away, but maybe later on you'll feel a little bit better. So I do believe in that. I do believe in a physical outlet for mental strain. So that works. It's working so far. They tell me if they don't like it. They do. They tell me when they don't like the snacks. They tell me when we didn't do it long enough. They tell me when they don't have enough sessions. I'm always open to their feedback. I love to listen. They have so much to say, and I just love to listen. Yeah. See, that's why this is amazing. When people ever ask for the girls, I try my best to not say no. They have their own schedules. Their parents have jobs. They babysit. They do things. Like Mac is actually a gymnast. She's a very good gymnast. And so it's sometimes hard to get them all, but I always try to get a core group because they want to be heard. They just need the opportunity. So far, we have never had to say no. I'm always like, okay, I will pick you up. She come if you feed her. As long as you got food, she's gonna show up. She's like, okay, are we gonna be? Okay. So respecting their times, respecting their parents' times, and also building coalitions with the parents. Like, we have a safe space. I'm a mandated reporter as a nurse. We talk about some heavy stuff. So there's a level of trust between the parents and myself. And I tell them, if there was danger to your child, I'm going to tell you the danger to your child. If there's an imminent threat, you will absolutely know. Trust that we're talking about these things and trust that I'm giving them sound advice. I feel so blessed and grateful that the parents have, because I know how I am with my daughter. And for them to trust me with their daughters, it's just like, it's amazing. It's truly amazing. It's a blessing. But no, these middle schoolers, like I said, we spend very little time on composition. I literally tell them to write what they feel. And then Denilah has a natural talent. I don't edit. She has a very powerful voice. So for her, it's more vocabulary. If anything, I'll give her a vocabulary word. Camille has the vocabulary, but she struggles with the confidence. She has a natural delivery. So with Camille, it's the confidence building. With Shakura, she has the vocabulary, but she's very soft-spoken. I like to think of her as our innocence. She talked about, I'm tired. And when you as an adult think you're tired of work and kids and what's for dinner, for a child to say, I'm tired, and then to articulate the things that you felt a child wouldn't know about, there's an innocence there. There's an innocence there that's getting lost. So for her, it's about, I told her, share your voice, because that innocence is lost. I hope Denilah's not offended, but Denilah's lost her innocence. She's had a hard life. She's seen a lot. The innocence is gone. Camille is teetering on losing her innocence. She's starting to see how harsh the world really is. So for Shakura, it's so important to maintain that innocence. Innocence will be lost, but keep it, hold it tight as long as you can, because it's precious. It's precious. The more I get to know them, the more I can look at their writing and say, it's easy to say, Shakura, speak louder. I'm not giving her anything by saying that. Everybody in her life's telling her to speak up and speak louder. But what I'm telling her is, you speak quietly, but I will listen, articulate, go slow. Because she's so used to people not hearing her, because she speaks softly, she rushes through her words. Slow down. What you have to say is important. Slow down. I don't know, I tailor it to the girl. Yeah. Things like this, just giving them a voice in a safe space. Like, I'm not wearing a mask right now, but we all came in with our masks. We're keeping our social distancing. Their safety is really important. Like, yes, this group is important. Yes, writing is important, but I don't want these girls to get sick. So those outdoor things, like the 40-40 Days of Peace, that was wonderful because it was outdoors. You know, they could spread apart, they could be safe. It's just challenging as a parent during this time to find a safe place to take your kids. Like, yes, you can go to the park, but you gotta have your mask and your hand sanitizer. So even small shows like this, where it's in a contained environment, where if someone were to get sick, we can do contact tracing, things like that is important. Inviting them to speak. Like, I'd love for them to be on CI Living again. They got an opportunity to do that. Just listen. If you want a teen with the voice, if you want to hear what they're thinking, invite the writers of Oya. Invite the writers of Oya. Because these girls, they show up every time. It might not be the same group of girls, but they're going to show up every time, and they will tell you exactly what they think and exactly what they feel. So I think the community's been awesome in just like recognizing us. I mean, the community pays for our grant, right? That's tax dollars. So thank you to the community for the ability to write for a grant, to host something like this. Just keep listening. Just keep listening. Pass our names along for your shows. Do little spots, you know.